I didn't expect anything to happen on that trip. It was supposed to be simple, a girls' weekend, a birthday trip. Drinks, games, inside jokes, and the kind of comfortable chaos that comes from being around people who have known each other for years. I was the outsider in the group. Most of the girls had grown up together. They had history I could never fully step into, childhood memories. Shared phases, stories that started with, remember when we were 12. I'd met them about 2 years earlier through my friend B, and while I got along with everyone, I still felt like a guest in their world. One of the girls was She stood out to me almost immediately when I first met the group. Not in an obvious, overwhelming way. Just presence, confident, playful, comfortable in her own skin. The kind of person who fills space without trying to. We weren't close friends, we didn't text one-on-one. We mostly saw each other at group events, birthdays, random get-togethers. But every time we were in the same room, I felt this quiet awareness of her. I never labeled it as attraction. I didn't question it. I'd always been with men. That was my history. That was my comfort zone. I didn't think of myself as someone who would blur lines like that. So when the trip started, I had no expectations. The first day was exactly what you'd imagine. Drinking games, loud laughter. Too many inside jokes I didn't fully understand but still laughed at. By the afternoon, most of us were already tipsy. By evening, a few of the girls were clearly drunk. That's when things started getting loose. A couple of the girls were giving each other quick pecks on the lips. Nothing serious. No lingering. Just playful, exaggerated, look how funny we are kind of kisses. Everyone laughed it off. It felt like a joke, like something they'd probably done 100 times before. I didn't participate. I watched, amused, but detached. At some point, A looked at me and said something along the lines of how there were only 2 people in the group she hadn't kissed yet. It felt like a throwaway comment. Teasing. I laughed it off. Later, during a game, the topic came up again. I mentioned casually that I'd only ever been physical with people I dated. It wasn't meant as a boundary. Just a fact. Something about me that had always felt normal. As the day went on, I drank more than I usually do. Not blacked out. Just warm, relaxed, slightly buzzed in that way that makes everything feel lighter. When we started getting ready for the night, A made the comment again, joking about not having kissed me yet. I don't know what possessed me in that moment. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was the energy of the trip. Maybe it was the fact that everything felt playful and harmless. Or maybe it was something I'd never allowed myself to notice before. I walked up to her and gave her a dramatic kiss on the cheek. Loud, exaggerated, meant to be funny. She turned her head. And kissed me on the lips. Not a peck. Not quick. Just long enough for my brain to stall. I remember the exact sensation of it, the surprise more than anything. My heart jumped. My body reacted before my mind could catch up. People laughed. Someone cheered. Someone made a joke. And that should have been it. But it wasn't. Something shifted after that. It was subtle at first. Easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. But I felt it immediately. When we were sitting around later, talking, A sat closer to me. Close enough that our legs touched. At some point, she leaned back and rested against me. Then she was cuddled up next to me on the bed while everyone else was sprawled around the room. She held my hand when we walked to dinner, not dramatically, not announced. Just reached for it like it was natural. My brain was screaming questions, but my body felt calm, comfortable, like this made sense in a way I couldn't explain. She grabbed my waist when we were standing in line, gave my butt a playful squeeze when no one was looking, pulled me onto her lap at one point, and traced slow lines on my leg like it was the most normal thing in the world. I didn't stop her. I didn't pull away. I didn't even feel uncomfortable. I felt wanted. That realization hit me hard. At the bar later that night, she kissed me again. This time there was no audience, no laughter, no joke to hide behind. It turned into a real makeout session. Brief, but intense enough that I had to remind myself where I was. At some point she asked if she could sleep in my bed that night. My heart started racing. Before I could answer, one of our friends intervened and guided her away to her own bed. The moment passed, but the tension didn't. Our beds were next to each other. I lay down facing her. She reached out and grabbed my hand, and we traced each other's arms slowly, deliberately, like we were both testing how far we could go without crossing an invisible line. When B went to the bathroom, A leaned over, grabbed my face, and kissed me again. This time slower, deeper. B saw us when she came back. She turned around and gave us privacy without saying a word. After that, we just held hands. She stroked my hair. I felt safe. I felt electric. I felt like I was floating somewhere between excitement and panic. Then we fell asleep. The next morning, everything felt normal. Too normal. No awkwardness. No conversation. No, so about last night. We packed up. We laughed. We went home, and that's when it hit me. I couldn't stop thinking about it, not just the kissing. Not just the physical part, the way she looked at me. The way she touched me like it wasn't a joke. The way it felt different from anything I'd experienced before. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what she thought. And I didn't know how to bring it up without making it weird. All I knew was this. Whatever happened on that trip didn't feel like nothing. And pretending it was felt impossible. The quiet after the trip was louder than anything that had happened during it. When I got home, everything felt slightly off. My apartment looked the same. My routine hadn't changed. My phone sat on the table like it always did. But my head was completely elsewhere. I kept replaying the weekend in fragments. The way A had looked at me when she kissed me. The way her hand rested on my leg like it belonged there. The way she'd asked to sleep in my bed like it wasn't a joke at all. And then, nothing. No message. No comment. No acknowledgement. I told myself that was normal. That this is what adults do when something happens in a group setting. They pretend it didn't. That maybe it had. Meant nothing to her. The same way casual hookups sometimes mean nothing to people who are comfortable with them. But I wasn't comfortable. This wasn't something I had experience with. I'd never been with a woman. I'd never crossed a line like that with a friend. I'd never felt this combination of excitement and anxiety tangled together. I didn't know how to categorize what I was feeling. Was it attraction? Was it curiosity? Was it just the adrenaline of doing something new? Or was it something more specific, something that involved her, not just the situation? Every time I picked up my phone, I half expected a message from her, something casual, something that acknowledged what had happened without making it heavy. Nothing came. I started listing reasons in my head for why it didn't mean anything. She'd been drinking. It had started as a joke. We were on a trip. People act differently on trips. She'd kissed other girls before. This probably wasn't new for her. At the same time, another list kept forming, one I tried not to look at too closely. She didn't kiss everyone. She kept choosing me. She was touchy in a way that didn't feel random. She asked to sleep in my bed. She said, out loud, that she wanted me. That last one stuck with me more than I wanted to admit. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. If it didn't mean anything, why did it feel like this? A few days passed. I tried to distract myself. Work, errands, seeing friends. But every quiet moment pulled me right back to her. I didn't want to make it weird. That was my biggest fear. The group dynamic mattered. B mattered. I didn't want to be the person who misread a situation and turned it into something awkward for everyone. But I also couldn't stand the idea of doing nothing. Eventually, I sent her a message. It was about nothing. Completely safe. Something generic. I told myself it was just a feeler, a way to see if she'd respond, if there was any warmth there, or if she'd keep it distant. She didn't reply right away. I spent the entire evening trying not to check my phone every 5 minutes. When she finally did reply, it was late. She said she'd been busy at work. The next morning, I woke up to a message from her. It was a picture of her in the bath. Nothing explicit, nothing inappropriate. Just intimate enough to make my heart jump. I stared at my phone for a long time before responding. That was the moment something shifted. People don't send pictures like that for no reason. Even if they're playful, even if they're casual. There's intent there, or at least openness. We started messaging more after that. Still light. Still careful, but there was a different energy to it now. Something flirtier, something that felt intentional. I found myself smiling at my phone in ways I hadn't in a long time. At the same time, I was terrified of reading too much into it. I didn't want to project feelings onto her that she didn't have. I didn't want to assume this was heading somewhere when maybe, for her, it was just fun. I kept thinking about how experienced she was compared to me. She'd been with men and women. She'd navigated attraction like this before. For me, this was brand new territory. I didn't want to come across as naive or intense. Or like I was trying to define something that didn't need to be defined. A few days later, I asked what she was doing that weekend. She said she wasn't sure yet. That she'd let me know what her day looked like. It wasn't a no, but it wasn't a yes either. We messaged throughout the day. Nothing heavy. Just enough to keep the connection alive. That night, she had a work event. She told me she'd had a few drinks and said she wished she could meet up with me. My heart jumped. I told her she could, but I also said something that, in hindsight, might have sent mixed signals. I told her I didn't want a repeat of the trip, that I looked forward to seeing her soon, but I wanted it to be different. At the time, I thought I was being responsible. I thought I was protecting myself. I didn't want another drunken, confusing moment that left me spiraling afterward. But as soon as I sent it, I worried she'd take it the wrong way. The next day, we kept flirting. She responded to a picture I sent with a filter that said, "How many people have crushes on you?" 0, by saying she knew at least one person who did. That sentence stayed with me all day. It gave me just enough confidence to relax, to stop overthinking every word I typed. Saturday came, and we met for brunch. I was nervous in a way that surprised me. My hands shook a little as I got ready. I kept changing my outfit, second-guessing myself, trying to look casual while feeling anything but. When I saw her, everything else faded into the background. Conversation came easily. We talked about the trip, about work, about random things. We didn't talk about that night, not explicitly, and part of me was relieved it was public. That there were people around. That we didn't have to dive into the heavy stuff yet. She kept commenting on how similar we were. How much we had in common. It felt intimate in a different way, like we were getting to know each other instead of just reacting to chemistry. At the end, we hugged. It lingered. We both knew it. I could feel the hesitation between us. That moment where one of us could have leaned in and changed everything. Neither of us did. I got into my car and sat there for a moment, heart pounding, wondering if I'd just missed my chance. Before I even pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed. She messaged me saying she really wished she'd kissed me, but wasn't sure if I wanted to. I felt a rush of relief so intense it almost made me laugh. I told her I did want to, that I'd wanted to too. We talked about it openly then, about being unsure, about not wanting to misread each other. It felt honest, vulnerable, safe. She said she might come to a party that night. I told her if she did, I promised I'd initiate it this time. She couldn't make it. I was disappointed, but it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a pause, like something that was still unfolding. The rest of the weekend, we kept talking. Flirting mixed with real conversation, not just attraction, but connection. For the first time since the trip, I felt like I wasn't alone in this anymore. I still didn't know exactly what this was. But I knew it wasn't nothing, and I knew I wanted to see where it went. By the time we made plans to see each other again, it no longer felt like an accident. It felt intentional. We were messaging constantly now, not obsessively, but consistently. Good morning texts, little updates about our days, complaints about work, jokes that only made sense between us. It was subtle, but it felt different from how I talked to my other friends. There was a sense of anticipation underneath everything. We were supposed to meet for lunch during the week, but life interrupted in the most unexpected way. She got into a car accident. Nothing serious, thankfully. She was okay, but her car was totaled. Her mom came to stay with her afterward, which meant our plans had to change. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to show I cared without being overbearing. So I sent her flowers. She was completely surprised. She messaged me as soon as they arrived, telling me how much it meant to her. That simple gesture felt like a turning point, like something had shifted from playful to thoughtful. A mutual friend and I went to see her the next day. We didn't get much time alone, but just seeing her again made me realize how much I missed her presence. The way she smiled at me. The way she gravitated toward me even when others were around. Then the world changed. COVID started escalating. Offices shut down. Hours were cut. Suddenly, both of us were home more than we expected. A few days later, she came over. I was so nervous, I thought I might throw up. I cleaned my apartment like a maniac, changed my clothes twice. Tried to convince myself that this was just a friend coming over. Nothing more, nothing less. She arrived, and everything immediately felt comfortable and tense at the same time. We sat on the couch, turned on the TV, and talked. About the trip, about life, about nothing in particular. An hour passed, and neither of us moved closer. But the space between us felt charged. Then she said she wanted to get comfy with me. My brain immediately went to cuddling. Something safe. Something familiar. I pulled a blanket over us, ready to settle in. She didn't. She leaned in and kissed me. There was no hesitation this time. No question about whether it was okay. It felt deliberate. Soft at first, then deeper. The kind of kiss that makes everything else disappear. I kissed her back, heart racing. It was incredible. but then my thoughts started to spiral. This was happening fast, faster than I expected, faster than I'd prepared myself for. I felt overwhelmed, not because I didn't want it, but because I wanted to make sure I was doing this right. She started to move things forward, and I realized I needed a moment to breathe. One suggested we move to my room. Not to escalate things, but to slow down. Somewhere quieter, somewhere less exposed. She agreed. We kept kissing, lying side by side, hands exploring carefully. I could feel her hesitation too. She pulled back slightly and told me she was nervous, that she wanted to make sure I was enjoying it, that she didn't want to push me into anything. That meant more to me than I could explain. I told her we didn't have to do anything else that day if she wasn't comfortable, that I was okay just being close to her. We ended up cuddling instead, wrapped up together, breathing in sync. At one point we fell asleep like that, completely relaxed. When she left, my apartment felt quieter than it had ever been. That night, we talked about it. About how we both wanted more but didn't want to rush. About how neither of us had done this before, not like this, not with each other. That was when she told me something I hadn't expected. She hadn't actually been with a woman before either. I'd assumed she had because she seemed so comfortable, so confident. But this was new for both of us. That knowledge leveled the playing field in a way that made me feel closer to her. We weren't navigating this from different places. We were both figuring it out together. Over the next week we talked constantly. The flirtation was there, but so were real conversations about our lives, our fears, our past relationships. We planned to see each other again that weekend, but something started weighing on me. We hadn't talked about what this was. Not labels, not yet, but expectations. I knew myself well enough to know that once I started caring, I cared deeply. I wasn't someone who could casually explore something like this while also dating or hooking up with other people. I didn't know if she felt the same. I didn't want to scare her off by asking, "What are we?" too soon. But I also didn't want to find out later that we were on completely different pages. The thought of her seeing other people while we were doing this made my chest tighten. At the same time, I didn't want to be unreasonable. We hadn't defined anything. We weren't officially dating, we were just exploring. But exploring still meant something to me. I kept asking myself if it was fair to want exclusivity without a label. Was it okay to say, "I want to keep this between us," even if we didn't know where it was going yet? Or was that too much too soon? I didn't want to claim her. I just wanted honesty, clarity, the reassurance that we were both taking this seriously. I realized that the real fear wasn't rejection. It was misalignment. The idea that I might be building something in my head that didn't exist for her. The night before we were supposed to see each other again, I barely slept. I rehearsed conversations in my head. Tried to find the right words. Tried to figure out how to express my feelings without overwhelming her. When we finally talked about it, it was gentler than I expected. We both admitted we didn't know exactly what we wanted yet. That this was new. That it felt exciting and scary and meaningful all at once. I told her that exclusivity mattered to me, not forever, not as a demand, but as a boundary. That if she wanted to explore this with other people, I'd respect that. But I wouldn't be able to continue in the same way. She listened. She didn't dismiss it, she didn't laugh it off. She said she appreciated my honesty, that she wasn't seeing anyone else. That she liked the idea of exploring this together, without distractions. We didn't label ourselves that night. But we agreed on something important. This mattered. We weren't pretending anymore. We weren't brushing it off as a drunken mistake or a one-time thing. We were choosing to see where this could go. For the first time since that trip, I felt calm. Not because everything was figured out, but because we were finally talking about it. Whatever this became, I knew one thing for sure. I was glad I hadn't stayed silent.